Generation 1. Kanto. The start of it all. Many people will say that this is Pokemon at its best, and just as many others will say it's Pokemon at its worst. There are reasons for both. Even though I just finished playing the game myself, I'm still not entirely sure where I personally stand on the matter. On the one hand, the game has a ton of problems that pile up. I'm tired of having Gen 1 shoved down my throat, and I did not enjoy having to play through 60% of the game again because of a technical problem that caused some of my footage to get corrupted. On the other hand, I genuinely enjoyed my time playing this game, and I can't point to one problem and say, that kills the game. I'll talk about it more in detail later, but most of this gen's problems are really small problems that are easily ignored at first, but then when you stop and take a look at the bigger picture, there's a lot of small problems with this. But again, more on that later. A little history first. Pokemon was developed by Game Freak, a company started by Satoshi Tajiri, Ken Sugimori, and Junichi Masuda that started as a gaming magazine in the early 1980s. After a while, they decided to start making their own games, the first of which being Quincy, which was released by Namco in 1989 and Hudson Soft in 1990 for US markets. A kind of puzzle game where you have to defeat enemies by flipping the tiles they walk on, sending them backwards while scoring as many points as possible via these star tiles, I think. I haven't played it myself, so I think the footage will do a better job explaining it than I can. Back to Pokemon. When Game Freak pitched the idea of Pokemon to Nintendo, they had their doubts, but agreed to publish the title anyway. Guess the heads of Nintendo were glad they agreed to that, because in 1996, Pocket Monsters Red and Green were released in Japan to blockbuster success. But wait, Red and Green? What about Blue? Well, the original versions of the game were Red and Green, but Blue was released later that year as a special edition version that fixed some bugs and also made the Pokemon sprites look less horrifying. So when the games were localized for North America in 1998, they decided they would localize Blue version and make a separate Red version for the whole pair games thing. But while those were being localized for North America, Game Freak made an even more special version called Yellow and released it in Japan, with North America getting it a year later in 1999. This version fixed a few more bugs, cleaned up the Pokemon sprites even more, and made some other smaller changes to the game that were inspired by the anime. These changes include the player starting with a Pikachu instead of their choice between a Bulbasaur, Charmander, or Squirtle, like Ash, and your rival getting an Eevee instead of whichever of the three is strongest against the one you chose. The game also gave you the ability to get all the original Kanto stars without having to trade and feature Jessie, James, and Meowth from the anime as a kind of second-in-command in Team Rocket. This is the version we will be using for this video, as I believe in giving games the best yet realistic chance to succeed. Yellow may not be as well known as Red and Blue, but it is slightly better if only for the improved sprites. Plus, I already had a Pokemon Yellow Let's Play in progress when I decided to do this, so I figure I may as well go with Pokemon Yellow and finish that series while I work on this video. After Gen 1 was released, the world was sentenced to Pokemania. Kids everywhere were playing the video games, the card game, and watching the anime. I was incredibly young during it, like wearing a diaper for half of it young, but I was still there. And maybe it's my nostalgia talking, but it was a great time for Pokemon fans. But eventually, excitement for Pokemon died down and wouldn't rise back up to that level until Pokemon Go launched on mobile, much later down the line. And even then, it only lasted for a summer. Luckily though, it didn't fade into obscurity like other IPs. However, opinions on the games that started this craze have soured over the years, to the point where many fans see Gen 1 as being straight up bad. This video will basically be me taking another look at Gen 1 and trying to figure out where I personally stand on the matter. Bear in mind, I am biased as I grew up with these titles, but I will try to look at things from other perspectives. Keyword being try. Let's start with the campaign. You start in Pallet Town and make your way into the tall grass. After taking a few steps into the grass, you're stopped by Professor Oak. In Yellow, you are attacked by a Pikachu while in the grass, and Oak catches it. You go back into Oak's lab where your rival is waiting. Oak says that he has a Pokemon for you. In Red and Blue, you get the choice between either Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle, with your rival getting whichever is strongest against yours. In Yellow, however, Oak intends to give you an Eevee, but Blue shoves you out of the way and takes it for himself. So Oak gives you the Pikachu he caught earlier instead. After a rival battle, you make your way north to Viridian, but can't progress any further because this guy is passed out on the road. There is a gym here, but it's closed for now. So instead you go to the mart where this guy tells you, this random kid, to deliver a package to Oak. Smart. I'm definitely not going to seal it or anything. Anyway, you go back to Pallet, give Oak his package, and he gives you and Blue both a Pokédex, an electronic encyclopedia that automatically records data on Pokemon as you catch them. Oak then gives you the objective to complete the Pokédex. How do you do that? Well, it's simple. you gotta catch them all. A slogan that's become increasingly more difficult every few years, to the point where they completely dropped it in Gen 3 and just hoped everyone would forget about it. Honestly, filling out the Pokedex usually isn't a priority for me. Normally I just do the gym challenge and put off the Pokedex until after I've exhausted all post-game content, and that's assuming I ever decide to complete the Pokedex at all. And in regards to a certain controversy in Gen 8, we'll discuss that when we get there. But anyway, I mentioned this gym challenge. It's what I personally consider to be the main objective of the game. There are 8 gym badges throughout the region. Defeat a gym's leader, and you get the gym's badge. Get all 8 badges, and you can challenge the Elite Four and the Pokemon League Champion after getting through Victory Road. Beat them all, and you take the title of Pokemon League Champion for yourself. Along the way, you'll have to deal with Team Rocket, an evil syndicate bent on taking over the world. A lot of people talk about how it's up to a preteen player character to stop evil teams like this, and while in some cases it's true in Gen 1, in others, the player just kind of stumbles across them while they're doing their thing. Like in Celadon, they don't have a grip on the city or anything, you just kind of find their base because someone had the bright idea to guard a poster that hides a button that reveals a secret staircase. Team Rocket owns this casino, right? Can't they just have a secret code that only the person behind the counter knows and have them reveal the staircase? There's actually a fan theory that suggests that Team Rocket isn't actually evil and that all their actions were done to stop the legendary Pokemon Mewtwo, a clone of the Pokemon Mew, despite Mewtwo coming first in the Pokedex. While this is an interesting theory, I don't think it's ever been confirmed by anyone within Game Freak Nintendo or the Pokemon Company. But Team Rocket isn't the only obstacle you'll come across. You'll also have to deal with your aforementioned rival. You'll come across him multiple times on your journey, and every time you do, he'll challenge you to a battle on the spot. Even in a corporate office building in the middle of a Team Rocket invasion. Yeah, thanks for distracting me while I'm trying to save these innocent civilians, douche. Yeah, and this gen your rival has been designed to really get under your skin. From stealing a Pokemon meant from you and whining when Oak tells him to give it back, to always being a step ahead of you, to challenging you at very inopportune times, I'm trying to save people here, you dick, to leaving with a smell you later, even sniping the Pokemon League Champion title from right under your nose. The game does a great job of making you hate this asshat. Clearly he's driven by his desire to be better than you at everything, and his constant failures drive him to extremes. He does mellow out in later games, but it would have been cool to actually see this development happen in-game. Oh well, I guess. That's pretty much it for the campaign. Time to talk about gameplay. The game plays like a typical JRPG. Part of the game is spent exploring an overworld, while the other part is spent in a turn-based battle format, where both parties select the move they'd like to use that turn. Then the Pokemon with the highest speed stat attempts the move they chose, and if the other Pokemon is still standing, they attempt their move. There are many factors that go into what a move will do, such as the stats and types of both Pokemon, as well as the stats, types, and effects of the move being used. Some moves deal damage, some either buff or debuff you or your opponent, some still inflict status effects like poison or paralysis, and even still some do a combination of the three. You can also switch out to a different Pokemon, use an item. There are a number of strategies you can implement taking all these into account. But in the single player campaign, usually just sending out a Pokemon that has a type advantage against your opponent that's at roughly the same level is enough to get the job done. Now, I haven't delved much into the Pokemon series' competitive multiplayer scene, but from what I've experienced there, that strategy will not work. And you know what? That's for the best. Multiplayer would get boring fast if it were that easy. But how do you get these Pokemon? That's where the catching mechanic comes in. See, not all Pokemon have trainers. Some Pokemon are wild and ripe for catching. See a wild Pokemon you want? Throw an empty Pokeball at it and you might just catch it, and then you can add it to your team. Thing is, it's usually not that simple, as even low-level Pokemon will break out of the Pokeball if that's all you do. So you'll have to increase your chances of catching it by weakening it and maybe even inflicting status effects. Be careful not to knock it out, because if you do that, the Pokemon cannot be caught at all. When a Pokemon makes another Pokemon faint, they gain experience. If they get enough experience, they'll level up, which will increase their stats, as well as giving them the potential to learn a new move or even evolve. When a Pokemon evolves, they change into a new kind of Pokemon, and their stats will increase more per level than they would in their previous form. There's one drawback to evolving your Pokemon, and that's that they learn new moves much slower with every evolution. For example, Squirtle can learn Hydro Pump at level 42, whereas its final evolution, Blastoise, doesn't get a chance to learn until level 52. Throughout my time playing Pokemon, I never noticed this really becomes an issue in single player. At least not until the playthrough of Yellow I did for this video, where Charizard didn't learn Flamethrower until level 46, and you already know how long I had to wait to get Hydro Pump on Blastoise. Luckily there are TMs. Consumable items that teach a Pokemon a new move. However, there are a finite amount of TM. Not all moves can be taught via a TM, and some TMs won't work on some Pokemon at all. If you know a Pokemon can learn a certain move naturally, I say it's better for that Pokemon to do that instead of using a TM. Leveling up isn't the only way to evolve Pokemon. Sometimes you can evolve a Pokemon via these things called evolution stones. There are only a few Pokemon that evolve in this way, and even then you have to use the right stone in order to evolve. Even then, from what I've seen, once you evolve a Pokemon this way, they stop learning moves naturally. Once they're in that form, your only hope is TMs, motherfucker. There's even a Pokemon designed entirely around evolution stones, Eevee, but we'll talk about that when I get to the Pokemon I use in this playthrough. There's also trading. Some Pokemon evolve when traded. I've never used a Pokemon's final stage that requires trading before, because I'm sad and alone, so I can't say anything about them other than that they exist. Oh yeah, the multiplayer, I completely forgot about it. It's the entire reason the games are split up into different versions. Basically, if you have a link cable, players can trade Pokemon between each other, and even battle them. More recent generations would add more multiplayer content, but in Gen 1, it's just trading and battling. I talk about this in more detail, but again, sad and alone. Also, every time I go looking for a Game Boy link cable, I get a GBA link cable instead. Or at least that's what I think is happening. I'm playing these on GBAs and the Game Boy Player, so maybe there are compatibility issues? I don't even know anymore. For lack of a better segue, let's talk about the Pokemon I use in my playthrough. First up, Pikachu. The anime would have you believe Pikachu is a powerhouse, and while it's certainly no pushover, I personally wouldn't describe it as much. Still, it's fast as fuck and can do a shit ton of damage given it's not against a Pokemon resistant to electric type attacks. Next up, Pidgey and Pidgeotto. I didn't wind up using Pidgeotto in my final team, but that was never the plan to begin with. The Pidgeot line is a great early game Pokemon, fills the flying type role spectacularly, and continues to stay a useful member of the party for as long as you have it on there, given you evolve the thing when given the chance. Mankey! Man, the thing is incredibly useful early game, especially if you're playing Yellow like me. Mankey is the first fighting type Pokemon you can get in the game, and it learns its first fighting type move, Low Kick, at level 9 in Yellow specifically. Perfect seeing as Pikachu ain't gonna do much against any of Brock's Pokemon, especially Onix. Unfortunately, Mankey doesn't learn Low Kick or any fighting type move until level 33 in Red, Blue, and Green. So, sorry Charmander starters! Passing mention to Xenree. I didn't use it in the run I used for footage, but when I had to replay half the damn game due to corrupted footage, thanks Elgato, I decided to catch one because it could learn Cut, Dig, and would make for a good counter to all the Nidorans I was sure to run into, as well as Lieutenant Surge. And it proved itself to be actually pretty good. Good job, Tantru! I'll use you in the final team of another run. Next, Bulbasaur. Bulbasaur. Whenever people ask me what my favorite Pokemon is, I always default to Bulbasaur because of the "he's number one" joke. But it's genuinely one of my favorite starter lines. I remember as a kid I would choose Charmander as my starter, like all kids would. But I wouldn't get anywhere past Lieutenant Surge with it, and that's assuming I got past Misty at all. Then I tried Squirtle, but got similar results. Then I, admittedly reluctantly, tried Bulbasaur, and I blew past Misty and Lieutenant Surge. Bulbasaur proved itself to me while I was still a dumb kid who had no idea what he was doing. Since then, I've grown to like the line more and more, and I also took up the tradition of always choosing the grass starter whenever I go through a region for the first time. You can get this thing really early in Yellow by constantly giving your already at full health Pikachu a potion 10 to 25 times. I don't really know what else to say about the Bulbasaur line other than it can take hits and dish them back out like a champ. Oh, poor Charizard. Hated by so many reasons that aren't even your fault. Don't get me wrong, I understand where everyone's coming from, but I still found Charizard to be a pretty good party member during my playthrough. It would have been amazing if it learned Flamethrower before Victory Road, but I still got a lot of use out of this thing. I think the main reason people hate it is just because it's fucking everywhere in Pokemon's marketing. It was a prominent member of Team Alakazam in the first Mystery Dungeon. On the cover of Explorers of Sky, when they introduced Mega Evolutions, Charizard got 2 of them. It was the only Kanto starter line to make the cut when Dex had happened. Again, we'll talk about Dex when we get to Gen 8. And in Gen 8, the only Pokemon champion Leon was shown to have prior to your battle with him was a Charizard. Seriously? Now, I see Pokemon Company's logic here. They've been trying to get Pokemon back to the level of popularity it had back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And back then, having a Charizard was seen as a sign to everyone else that you were a serious trainer who wasn't to be messed around with. So it makes sense from a business perspective to entice people back with what they saw as a sign of mastery back when they were still fans. Unfortunately, it backfired and Charizard got Roman Reigns. In short, I like Charizard, but dear Arceus, I'm tired of seeing it everywhere. Blastoise! Don't have much to say here. Still a good Pokemon. Became the backbone of the team. Not ideal in all situations, but when all else fails, Blastoise almost never fails. Part of that comes down to the move Surf. 95 power, 100% accuracy, and 15 power points. Surf is so overpowered, and I love it. So Eevee's entire thing is that it can evolve into one of 3 other Pokemon, though more will be added in later gens, depending on which evolution stone you get. The water-type Vaporeon with a Water Stone, the fire-type Flareon with a Fire Stone, and the electric-type Jolteon with a Thunder Stone. I took this to mean that the non-evolved Eevee would be about as good as the average evolution. I could not have been more wrong. When you first get it, at least, there's not much it can do on its own. I managed to make it work after a while, but even towards the end, it still felt like the weakest link. Combine this with the fact that you can buy evolution stones in the Celadon department store, which is in the same city where you can get an Eevee in Gen 1, and it became obvious to me that, at least in Gen 1, Eevee serves one purpose, and that is to be evolved into one of its, at the time, 3 evolutions. Maybe this has changed in later gens, what with Eevee joining the Hall of Marketable Pokemon, and I myself love Eevee. But in Gen 1, Eevee without its evolution doesn't offer much. Why put Eevee on my team if I wasn't gonna evolve it then? That is actually a spoiler for Gen 2. I don't think anyone really cares. It's not a big thing, and fans who know their stuff likely already know what I was going for with this team. But, I don't know, something's telling me to keep it to myself for now. Snorlax, I don't have a flesh for it. Arceus, I underestimated this thing. Every time I saw Snorlax, its strategy was to recover using rest. Maybe do a move that does damage, and then rest again. You see, rest is a move that will fully restore your HP, but at the cost of putting the user to sleep, so you can't do anything for the next few turns. If your opponent knows what they're doing, they'll attack while you're asleep, and basically undo the rest, effectively locking both parties into a long, drawn-out fight. I decided to put Snorlax on my team for the same reason I put an unevolved Eevee on my team. Then I found the TM for Rage. Rage is a move that starts out weak, but gets stronger each time the user takes damage. Though once you start using it, you can't stop until either a Pokemon faints, assuming you have the battle style set to switch, or the battle ends. So if you're gonna use Rage, it's in your best interest to put it on a Pokemon that can take a bunch of hits. But which Pokemon could benefit from Snorlax? Perfect! I taught this thing Rage and turned it into an angry kaiju that I myself fear. After Gen 1, Arceus itself would eliminate the Rage TM from the Poke Earth, as well as any signs that it ever existed to begin with. It did this to ensure another god of destruction could not be created. The only ones safe from Rage Snorlax are the ghosts. But if you're not a ghost, fear not. Rage Snorlax will make you one. Seriously, Rage Snorlax is just like... To be honest, it stops being a good strategy towards the end of the game. But luckily, Snorlax has 3 other move slots for moves like Headbutt, Earthquake, and Double Edge. So far, I'm probably making out Gen 1 to be pretty good, and I do like it. But there are some things that I have a problem with in this game. The thing is, most of these problems will be fixed as early as Gen 2, and there's a part of me that doesn't want to mention these problems until then. But I feel I do have to mention them at the very least. Like the fact that if you want to use a move in the field like Strength, you have to pause the game, go to the Pokemon menu, select the Pokemon, then select the move Strength. What else are these boulders here for? Then we have the inventory. The inventory. Okay, there are a lot of items in the game. To carry them, you have a bag that can hold up to 20 different kinds of items. Chances are you're gonna run out of space in your bag. That's why the game has item storage that you can access on a PC. However, item storage doesn't work like Pokemon storage, where the game automatically sends any Pokemon you can have with you to store it. You want to pick up an item but have a full bag? Too bad. Use an item or go back to the nearest PC to free up some space. Now, item storage itself has a limit of 50 kinds of items. But how many items could you possibly get? There are 50 TMs and 5 HMs, meaning there's not even enough space in item storage for those things. Now, granted, you're likely not going to have all the TMs at any one time, but my point stands. Between those, healing items, Pokeballs, key items, anything else, you have so little room for those. After TMs and HMs, I probably had 30 spaces between both bag and storage. In the last third of the game, I had to spend 10 to 20 minutes managing my inventory so I can get more items every couple of hours. Next, I personally didn't have any trouble with this next problem, but it's still worth bringing up. In Gen 1, the Psychic type was incredibly overpowered. It was immune to the Ghost type, was incredibly powerful, being built around Pokemon with high special stats, and had high-powered moves, most of which can cause confusion, and they only had one weakness: Bug. The problem with that weakness is that the more common Bug Pokemon stop being useful after the early stages of the game. Towards the end of the game, there are really only two useful Bug Pokemon that can work: Scyther and Pinsir. The problem is, both are only found in the Savari Zone, and even then they are incredibly rare, only spawning in 2 parts of the map with a less than 5% chance to appear. That leaves you with a Paris and Venonat line. Actually, the Venonat line is part poison, so even that is a bad idea against Psychic Pokemon. So unless you're willing to look for a Scyther or Pinsir for a couple hours, your only real option is the Paris line. Good luck keeping that strong for the second half of the game. It's not invincible, however, as a good physical attacker can usually get the job done. Like my Snorlax, who almost took down Sabrina's Alakazam, which was 12 levels higher than it, had a ton of buffs, and used the move Recover several times. If Snorlax was even 1 level higher, Sabrina's Alakazam wouldn't have stood a chance. Still, I can see why some people have a problem. I know there are more problems than these 3, but these are the 3 biggest problems I could think of. And they would all be fixed in Gen 2. In my opinion, Pokemon Gen 1 is still a good game on its own, but there are definitely better Pokemon games out there. Hell, there's a better way to experience Kanto specifically in the form of the remakes on the GBA. I would recommend these over the Gen 1 originals any day. And maybe it's the fact that I grew up with the first few gens, but I can't help but feel that a playthrough of Kanto is worth experiencing if you're a fan. If only to see how it all started. With that said, legit copies of the remakes can be pretty pricey online. So if you want to experience Kanto for cheap, you can still get the original Gen 1 game for $20 on the 3DS eShop. They're not as good as the remakes, but as long as you're willing to put up with a bare bones experience, I think you'll still find this to be an enjoyable experience. But that's Gen 1. I like it, but I definitely understand why others hate it. However, this would not be the end of Pokemon. While Pokemon Yellow was being released in North America, Game Freak had made and released Generation 2 of Pokemon with Pokemon Gold and Silver in Japan, with North America getting it the next year at the start of the first Christmas shopping season of the new millennium. Yep, the year 2000. We'll be looking at Generation 2 next, but not Gold or Silver. Like Gen 1, as Gold and Silver were releasing in North America, Game Freak made and released an enhanced Pokemon Crystal in Japan, with North America getting it the next year in 2001. That is what we'll be looking at next time. You can catch me streaming it on YouTube after this video goes out. As of recording this footage, I'm not sure where in my streaming schedule it's going to go, but I'm going to stream it. Hey guys, CSNazo in editing here. My current streaming schedule is Great Ace Attorney Chronicles on Tuesday at 7 PM, and Mass Effect Legendary Edition on Saturdays at 2 PM. We're almost done with Mass Effect Legendary Edition, so when that finishes up, Pokemon Crystal will be taking its slot on Saturdays at 2 PM, Eastern Standard Time. I even spent over $100 to play it on official hardware without having to point my camera at a 3DS! Because God knows I don't want to do that again.